Hi everybody, John Meadows here, and today I want to talk about a topic that I really love talking about this, and it's, can you get ripped naturally? I mean, how many of you out there have heard someone say, you know, you'll see someone and they're pretty lean, they'll go, oh, he's on something. He's got to be on something. You hear that a lot. Anytime someone looks abnormally lean, it's, oh, he's on something. Now, the reality is a lot of pro bodybuilders and people like that, they are on something. They're taking thyroid hormones, which drive up your metabolic rate big time. They're taking growth hormone, which is an incredible fat burner. So they are getting a lot of help in terms of getting ripped. So the question is, can you do this naturally? Well, I believe you can. And through the years, I've worked with probably more natural athletes than I have worked with enhanced athletes. So what I wanted to share with you today was how I would address getting ripped to a natural, because I think you can. Now, I'm just going to tell you straight up, it's going to be harder. It's not going to be as easy. You know, if you get somebody in the bodybuilding world that's enhanced and their fat loss stalls, what does the coach do? He feeds them some T3, some thyroid hormone. Boom. They don't even need to change their diet and they're already burning more fat. Then maybe they lower their calories, and then maybe after that, what do? Boom, they throw in some clenbuterol or growth hormone. So you can throw drugs at people and you can get them leaner, and it works 100%. But that's not what we want to talk about today. I could do another video on that. But what I want to talk about today is how you do this naturally. Now, I always liked working with natural athletes because it actually challenges your ability to solve problems. Like, you can't just throw drugs at the problem. You have to really address it. So I want to tackle this from a couple different aspects. Now, I want to start from the nutritional aspect, and I'm going to give you the basic thing to start with, and that's to make sure you're in a deficit. If you're watching this video, I'm sure you've heard that 1,000 times. Make sure you're in a caloric deficit. But I got to start there. So you need to understand you need to try to understand how many calories you're burning and what it takes to put you into a deficit. So if your total energy expenditure is 3,000 calories, when you add everything up, that's your basal metabolic rate. That's just what's needed to keep the lights on in your body. Your exercise quotient there. Another piece is called the thermic effect of food. How much does it burn how many calories does it burn to burn up, say, protein, carbohydrates and everything. And then the other one is it's called NEAT, but it's, what are you doing just sitting around during the day, when you're just walking around or whatever. So when you understand those things, let's say it's 3,000 calories total. So to be in a deficit, you're probably going to have to be at 2,700 calories, all right? So at the very basic fundamental level, you have to be in a deficit, especially if you're natural. We could talk about this. We could question this if you're not natural, but as a natural, you have to be in a deficit. So when you're reading all these people on Instagram saying, I'm natural, I'm having 500 grams of carbs a time, and I'm getting shredded, and like, maybe that's true, maybe it's not. I always think it's a little suspect. But anyways, so the deficit is number one. Now what's going to happen is you're going to continue to push that deficit, because what a lot of the coaches will tell you is it's strictly about being in a deficit. You go down to 2,700 calories, then you go down to 2,400, then you go down to 2,100, then you go down to 1,800, then 1,500. But here's the thing. The reality is, and I've seen this from working with people for decades, is you're going to come to a point where you're going to get stuck. I don't care how much you lower your calories, you're going to get stuck. There's a point of no return. And that's where a good coach can make some good decisions and help you as a natural continue to burn body fat. And one of the key ways to do that is anything from a cheat meal, which is only one meal, all the way up to a diet break, which can be 1 to 2 weeks of eating back at your maintenance level, or even maybe slightly above it. So what's always been interesting to me is people try to make this like 1 + 1 = 2, right? When you're dieting because of said study, this study said this study said this. But the human body is very complex. It's extremely complex. And I've seen people that if you give them a cheat meal on Friday, they look better on Saturday, they feel better, they get more energy, they move around better. You put them in a caloric surplus literally for one day, and all of a sudden you do better. Or you could have a refeed day where you're just adding, say for example, extra carbs. Add 200 grams of carbs to their meals for the day. You know, a lot of what science folks will tell you is that nothing happens meaningful in one day, but they're not doing studies on the type of people that you and I work with, the people that are deep into diets, low body fat. It's a completely different dynamic than the people in these studies. So you give people, say, 200 grams of carbs, and this is one of the things I like to do with the naturals myself. It's just give them a little bit extra food so that their body doesn't say, okay, you know, he's starving me, so I'm just going to slow way down. And listen, your BMR, your basal metabolic rate, is a huge percent, 60, 65, even 70% of the amount of calories that you expend. So if you start lowering that, you're in trouble. So every time you lower your calories, you lower that basal metabolic rate. That's why I'm saying it's a dead-end road. So the people that are telling you just cut calories, cut calories, cut calories, eventually it will turn into a dead end. I promise you that. You could go to 500 calories and you're still going to get stuck because your basal metabolic rate is going to lower so much. So anyways, a lot of times just eating some extra carbs once a week will tell your body, oh man, he's not starving me, so I can continue to operate up here. Okay, so that's kind of a progression on continue to get lean. Now, let's say you get a little leaner and then you get stuck. You start to get into this kind of suffering phase. And you guys have ever dieted hard, ladies, guys? If you've ever dieted hard, you get into this phase where you start to get tired, you start to get lethargic. And what happens then is that neat thing I talked about, it's called non-exercise activity thermogenesis, whatever it is, where you're just sitting around in between exercise and things like that. People literally start sitting around all the time, laying around all the time. I know this because I've done it myself. When you diet really hard, you get tired. And I can tell you there's times during my contest preps where I just wanted to sleep. I didn't want to do anything. So now, and that's actually you actually expend more calories during that than you do doing, like, say, cardio. Right? So let that sink in a bit. If you sit around and you're sleeping all the time, you're resting, you don't do anything, now all of a sudden 15, 20% of your calories that you were burning takes a big dip. Well, that cardio you're doing it's not really doing much now, because now you're not burning as much on the neat side. So my point in telling you all this is you've got to consciously tell yourself, I need to keep my neat up. So I need to keep active. So you need to literally find things to do to keep active. And I don't know what that is for you. It could be just to stay awake and go to the bookstore and read and then walk across the parking lot. It could be anything, right? But you got to stay active. And it's tricky because there's a balance, because sometimes if you just take a nap for 30 minutes, you'll feel recharged and rejuvenated. But to sit around and sleep for 2 hours, to watch Netflix for another 2 hours, to get sedentary makes a diet really hard. So you'll get to that point. Now, even beyond that, if you're trying to get down to some crazy body fat percentage, like let's say a guy's trying to get down to 4 or 5%, which is really lean, or a female, maybe she's trying to get down to 7 or 8%. That's really lean. That's crazy lean. So now there's another strategy that you can employ. So I want to talk just briefly about this. It's called a 24-hour fast, where you don't eat for a day. The challenge with lowering your calories is that you lower your basal metabolic rate, as I mentioned earlier. So if you just keep chopping calories, you lower your basal metabolic rate. But here's the interesting thing about a 24-hour fast. In a 24-hour fast, you're eating nothing, but your basal metabolic rate actually does not drop. Since you're not eating anything, actually your adrenal glands actually work a little bit. You produce a little bit more epinephrine, a little bit norepinephrine. You secrete these hormones that actually increase energy expenditure. It's your body's way of telling you, dude, you need to go get some food, so I'm going to give you some energy. I'm going to give you some adrenaline, so you'll go get some food. So what you can do is that in itself is what's creating the caloric deficit. So those other 6 days during the week, you don't have to lower your calories. You know, let's say you're on 2,500 calories. Instead of cutting those days more, you just take a day where you don't eat. Say, I don't know, say it's Sunday. you just knocked off 2,500 calories. So you're still in a deficit, but that one day, you created the deficit by keeping calories up and doing it in one day. So a 24-hour fast every 7 days, I find to be really effective, particularly for people who have very stubborn body fat. I find it pretty effective. Now, that's kind of the some of the nutritional things that I do. When you get really good at that, you can find your way to getting ripped. Now, training-wise, I want you to think about training-wise. You have to protect your muscle. So I see a lot of people training fasted with their weights. If you're natural, I think that's probably not the best idea. If you start to lose muscle mass, that is part of what drives that basal metabolic rate that I talked about. The more muscle mass you have, the more calories it takes to maintain. So what do you think happens if you start to lose muscle? It becomes very challenging to keep your basal metabolic rate up. So you have to protect your muscle by training. So how do you optimize that? Well, you don't take away nutrients around training. So make sure you eat before you train so you have energy. Make sure that you're having maybe some intra workout so that it can help you recover and get through a little bit longer workout. Make sure you're eating after you train just to replenish glycogen and things like that. So if you're going to cut your calories and do all those things, keep it intact around your training. And then the training itself, you have to, as a natural, you don't have protein synthesis and positive nitrogen balance turned on all the time from the drugs that people take. The people that are jamming the testosterone and anadrol and all that stuff, they're at an advantage. They've got ramped up protein synthesis big time, and you don't have that as a natural. So you're only going to be able to recover so much. You're going to be able to do so much. So what I like to tell my naturals is let's bring your volume down a little bit, but you got to keep your intensity up. The intensity is what's going to keep that muscle tissue as best as you can keep it. So you can't all of a sudden just lighten up your weights and go, oh, I'm just going to do sets of 20 now with a little bit lighter weight. I'm telling you that's a surefire way to lose muscle, lower your metabolic rate, and make getting ripped as a natural even harder. So I need you to keep the nutrition around your training, keep the intensity up, but again, you're natural, so we can't handle quite as much volume. And the other thing is, if you think about this logically, you're in a caloric deficit. That in itself makes it harder to recover, especially as a natural, So just think about that. Just logically think about it. Okay, I can't recover as well, but I'm going to keep the nutrition around so I can train harder. And that actually, the nutrition around training makes a huge impact on how you recover too. So I want you to avoid making that mistake of taking out nutrients around your training. It's a bad idea. I'm not dogmatic about too many things, but that's one thing where I think it's a bad idea. So I want you to think about your training and your nutrition around those aspects. So the last thing I want to talk about is kind of the stress that goes involved with dieting. When you're in a caloric deficit, you're in a stressed out state. And a lot of times what happens too is people can't sleep. What happens when you don't sleep often, if you're sleep deprived, is your body will secrete this hormone called ghrelin, which is a hunger hormone, makes you hungry. It also decreases a hormone that your fat cells produce called leptin. It's a satiety hormone that tells your brain, I'm good, I'm full, I'm satiated, I'm good. So you have less of the satiation signal and you have more of the hunger signal. So what's going to happen? You're going to want to eat more. And guess what your body craves? It craves sugar. This has been demonstrated over and over and over in sleep restriction studies. So you have to really try to focus on getting the right amount of sleep at night. And I've got multiple videos talking about the sleep aspect, but as a natural, again, you've got to really guard against all this increased cortisol that comes with not sleeping and being stressed out. So you've got to make sure you get enough sleep. You've got to make sure you're in a relaxed state. So the other thing I like to do is after training, you're kind of wound up, you're all fired up after training. Chill out. Sit down, chill out with your friends, just relax for 20 minutes or whatever. Really trying to calm down. Put your body back into a calm state so it's not stressed out and going crazy. Really focus on that. I think that's a little tip, but I do truly believe that helps, and I'm a big believer in that. And you'll see me after I'm done training. I'll just chill out at the gym for 15, 20 minutes and just relax. And the other thing I want to add is that, and this isn't really so much for naturals, it's for everybody. It's for naturals, it's for guys who aren't natural, whatever. Dieting is really stressful, and the leaner you get, the more challenging it becomes psychologically. And it can literally change who you are as a person. It can make a happy guy a grumpy guy. It can make a happy woman a grumpy woman. So you got to really not lose sight of the fact that you could strain your relationships. So your family, your friends, you could actually strain those relationships. And then that adds to even more stress. I know, unfortunately, I've been in the sport a long time, and unfortunately, I've seen a lot of divorces, a lot of broken relationships. I've seen families break up, in heavy part due to competing. And it's very, very sad. It's one of the saddest things I see. So you've got to be mindful of the stress that this hard dieting, getting down to that extremely low body fat percentage, it's going to make things hard. And I want to tell you now, because when you get to that point and all of a sudden you want to be angry or snap at somebody, I want you to think to yourself, this is the diet. Don't treat this person that way. It's only the diet talking. Be nice to them. Be respectful. And that's going to make your life a lot better, right? I know that sounds a little weird, but it's a big deal. For somebody like me that's been doing this for 30-some years, that was one of the best lessons I learned, was keep your relationships intact. You'll be healthier. You might be tired, you might be a little grumpy, but you'll be healthier and you'll be less stressed. There was one thing I could say that wrecks more so, again, this is probably not so much natural or not natural. One thing that I see wreck bodies in a day, particularly before contest, it's stress. Stress can absolutely destroy the way you look. So I would be very mindful of your stress. So as a natural, again, remember, you're not going to have out of this world ramped up protein synthesis. You're not going to have the recovery that the other folks have that are, using gear. So you got to be very mindful of your training, train a specific way, feed your body around training. And again, just really, you've got to optimize as much as you can naturally. And so that's why I wanted to bring up the stress part, because you got to be right on the money with all this stuff as a natural. But having said all that, I've got plenty of guys and women ripped naturally. Not easy at all, but it can be done. It absolutely can be done.